Hey everyone, GleeCon here again. Welcome for another episode of Oops, Lore of Warcraft. All right, we're going to continue going in our new format where we have the commentary as I go along, see how we like it. This part of Chapter 3 is called the Pandaren Revolution. Now we're up to 12,000 years before the Dark Portal, so only 12,000 years away from my Let's Play experience with you guys. Sounds like we're going to get to see our little adorable panda people join the ranks of the races that we've established so far. Here we go. The Thunder King's death weakened the Mogu, but their civilization continued lording over the Vale. The Empire's slaves suffered greatly under Lei Shen's barbarous successors, each ruler seemingly crueler than the last. The final Mogu emperor, Lao Fei, earned the title Slave Binder early in his tenure. He lived a life of decadence, confident that his supply of cowed slaves would never diminish. To earn their compliance, Lao Fei would tear apart slave families for even mild transgressions. Parents were separated. Children were dispatched to the serpent's spine to die as fodder before the mantid swarm. Harsh. It was this very fate that befell the family of a Pandaren brewmaster named Kang. His son was sent to the mantid, and his wife died trying to stop it. After the Mogu left his home and his life in ruins, Kang nearly succumbed to despair, but soon his thoughts circled around to a particular question. Why? Why did the Mogu inflict such pain? I think I wonder if this Kang is part of some of the brewmaster type of storylines that are in the Cross-Rank Wilds and stuff like that. Kang meditated on the slavery of his people, and he reached a radical conclusion. The extreme cruelty towards slaves was not a sign of the Mogu's strength, it was a symptom of their weakness. Facts. They had grown dependent on their servants. Without them, they were nothing. Kang devoted his life to exposing the Mogu's vulnerability. Apart from those who were sent to defend the serpent's spine, no slave was ever permitted to touch a weapon, a crime punishable by death. Thus Kang taught himself to use his own body as one. To elude the ever-watchful eyes of the Mogu, he learned to disguise his attacks as an artistic dance, and here we see why there's this martial arts element of the Pandaren. When he had finally mastered his techniques, he challenged his fellow slaves to strike him. None could. His dancing, his flowing movements kept him free of harm. The slaves begged Kang to teach them how to fight unarmed. Kang did, and word of this strange new combat method spread quickly among the oppressed peoples of the Mogu Empire, kind of the birth of the monk class. Hundreds of slaves adopted Kang's teachings and devoted themselves to learning this newfound art known thereafter as the Way of the Monk. When rumors of the movement reached Mogu ears, Kang relocated his followers to Kunlai Summit, fully aware that his apprentices were not yet strong enough to topple their oppressors. In secret, the Pandaren rebels built a monastery among the Windlash Peaks to begin to further train themselves as instruments of justice. So we have more of that little zone, the Kunlai Summit, and the temples that are around there. It was at Kunlai Summit that Kang found something utterly unexpected, the prison of Shuen, the White Tiger. Kang communed often with the August Celestial, learning the secrets of inner strength that lay within every heart. The Pandaren master passed along Shuen's wisdom to his followers. At last, the Pandaren monks were ready to fight, and this is how we get some of these tiger palm techniques and stuff. I'm sure. Their first major victory came at the Mogushan Vaults, the sacred chambers that housed the engine of Nalak Shah. There the rebels successfully drove the Mogu away from the source of their flesh-shaping power. The Pandaren's devastating attack prevented the Mogu from creating any new twisted soldiers, so they came down from Kunlai to the north, right into the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. This single victory not only heartened the Pandaren, but also drew other races to the rebellion. The Hosen, the Jinyu, the Grummels, and a burly race of bovine creatures called the Yongol all joined the effort to topple the Mogu Empire, which is interesting considering that the Yongol they're basically like the Mongols. They're a bad race. Bit by bit, the revolution grew. Kang was right. The Mogu had grown too reliant on their slaves, and as more rebelled, the empire fell into chaos. The Grummels, masters of communication and trade, disrupted Mogu supply lines. The mighty Yongol led raiding parties to wreak havoc in the northwest. The wily Hosen dug tunnels to infiltrate the mightiest Mogu strongholds. The mystic Jin Yu communed with the waters of the land to glean the future, telling Kang's forces where to strike and when to run. Eventually, Lao Fei's forces retreated to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, the royal seat of the Mogu Empire. Kang knew the enchanted land could sustain them for as long as they desired. Thus, to defeat the Mogu, the rebels needed to expose themselves and launch an attack. So it's like they used guerrilla tactics. And what's interesting and kind of sad is everyone was united, and we know that's not the case now. Kang did not hesitate to do so. He personally led the charge, striking deep into the Vale. He fought Lao Fei hand-to-hand and defeated him, but the Pandaren sustained mortal wounds in return. The slave binder and the former slave died together. Flushed with victory, some of the freed slaves considered seeking revenge against the surviving Mogu, butchering them as they had butchered their vassals for millennia. Yet one of Kang's most promising students calmed their bloodlust. As a secretive keeper of Pandaren history, the pupil Song had memorized many of Master Kang's philosophies and tales. Song retold Kang's stories again and again to the liberated slaves, reminding them about his commitment to true justice, not revenge. He walked from one end of the fallen empire to the other for the rest of his life, sharing Kang's wisdom and urging all creatures to find emotional balance within themselves. That's probably why we have the lore as such a big part of the exploration of Pandaria, and why there's so many achievements and lore spots and everything all around the land. As Song's stories spread, others began to follow in his footsteps. More and more Pandaren traveled the land, telling stories and encouraging inner peace in all they met. These lorewalkers, as they would eventually be named, became not only skilled storytellers but also conflict mediators, diffusing tense situations with allegories and parables that would help all sides see reason and find a middle ground. So began a time of peace and prosperity in and around the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. The Pandaren, along with the other races that called the region home, flourished. A new empire, one built on the principles of justice, wisdom, and benevolence, emerged to watch over the war-torn land. Our next chapter is probably going to be a bad one now, because it doesn't stay like that. And we have the Shah, which we know are like this spirit type of force that manifests the evil in the hearts of those around it. When Isharj died, its blighted remains scattered across the Vale of Eternal Blossoms and the surrounding regions. In time, the old god's evil seeped into the land itself. During his journeys, Song became keenly aware of this dark power that lurked in the earth. Isharj's lingering essence latched onto and amplified negative emotions, giving rise to malevolent spirits known as the Shah. By spreading Kang's teachings, Song hoped that he could help the Pandaren and other races negate the old god's influence and nullify the Shah. So even the dead old god, Isharj, is really at the crux of what's happening in Pandaria. And I guess that's interesting. What's kind of nice about reading all these stories is having all of this backstory makes you realize how it's really the old gods that are behind everything, behind almost all of the main evil forces that's driving each expansion. They're at the heart of the Burning Crusade and the demons and why they exist. They're the demonic guys with the wings that are the Nethrazim. They're at the heart of even Shadowlands. So from beginning to end, these guys really are the major players with the force of evil. All right, it was a nice time as always. I hope you guys learned a little bit. I like as we continue our Pandaria expansion, and we'll continue to learn that in the future on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. See you guys.